The cruelest mistake a kingdom can make is believing the quietest soul has the least value. Beneath a silver harvest moon, thousands of werewolves gathered inside the ancient valley of Ashen Hollow, where towering pine trees surrounded the moon festival like silent guardians that had witnessed centuries of promises, betrayals, and impossible destinies. Lanterns swayed gently in the crisp autumn breeze while long wooden tables overflowed with roasted food, fresh bread, warm cider, and polished silver goblets prepared for nobles from every major pack across the northern territories. Laughter echoed through the enormous ceremonial grounds, blending with the distant melody of violins and drums, yet none of those joyful sounds reached the young woman quietly carrying empty trays along the edge of the celebration. Evelyn Carter lowered her eyes each time another guest walked past her. At 22, she had learned that being unnoticed was often safer than being remembered. Her simple grey dress marked her as a servant assigned to the festival staff, though many whispered that she deserved even less than that. She was an Omega with no remarkable strength, no impressive lineage, and no visible gift that could earn respect in a society built upon power. Some called her unlucky. Others called her weak. Most simply acted as though she did not exist. As she carefully collected abandoned cups from a carved oak table, a group of young nobles brushed past without slowing. One of them deliberately bumped her shoulder, causing several wooden plates to tumble onto the grass. The sharp clatter briefly turned a few heads before laughter spread through the nearby crowd. "Careful," one man chuckled. "Even carrying dishes seems too difficult for the weakest Omega in the kingdom." Evelyn quietly knelt to gather the scattered plates before anyone else had to step around them. She offered no complaint, no angry glance, only a soft apology that disappeared beneath the music. Years of quiet endurance had taught her that defending herself rarely changed anyone's mind. Above the festival grounds, banners displaying the royal crest fluttered proudly from towering stone pillars. Every conversation eventually returned to the same subject. Tonight, the Alpha King himself would attend the Moon Festival after months away from the capital. Some believed he would announce new alliances. Others whispered he might finally choose someone worthy to stand beside him. The excitement spread like wildfire through every pack represented there. Beautiful daughters adjusted elegant gowns. Influential families rehearsed flawless greetings. Warriors stood straighter whenever royal guards passed nearby. Yet Evelyn continued polishing wooden benches near the outer ring of the festival, unnoticed beneath the growing anticipation. She had never expected destiny to notice someone like her. While replacing fresh candles around an old stone fountain, she noticed a little boy standing alone near the crowd. He appeared no older than 6, holding a small carved wolf in one hand while searching the sea of unfamiliar faces with growing uncertainty. Before Evelyn could approach, several adults hurried between them, blocking her view for only a heartbeat. When the crowd shifted again, the child had disappeared completely. A strange uneasiness settled inside her chest, gentle but persistent, like the first breeze before an unexpected storm. Around her, the celebration grew louder, brighter, and more magnificent with every passing minute. No one realized that before the moon reached its highest point, the forgotten servant quietly carrying empty trays would become the one person every eye in the kingdom could no longer ignore. The grand ceremonial bell echoed across Ashen Hollow 3 times, its deep voice silencing conversations as every guest turned toward the stone platform rising above the festival grounds. Noble families gathered closer, eager to be seen, while servants quietly stepped aside to clear the pathways reserved for honored guests. Evelyn Carter lifted another basket of polished cups and moved carefully along the outer edge of the crowd, hoping to finish her duties before the arrival of the royal procession. She kept her eyes lowered, unaware that several young nobles had already begun watching her with amused expressions. Among them stood Lucas Hawthorne, the confident son of one of the wealthiest Alpha families in the Northern Territories. Tall, impeccably dressed, and surrounded by admirers, Lucas enjoyed attention almost as much as he enjoyed reminding weaker wolves of their place. As Evelyn passed nearby, he stepped directly into her path with a pleasant smile that carried no warmth. "You there?" he called loudly enough for dozens of nearby guests to hear. Evelyn stopped immediately and bowed her head. "Yes, sir." Lucas picked up one of the polished silver goblets from her tray and examined it dramatically before handing it back. Since every great family is expected to contribute something memorable tonight, perhaps you should entertain us as well. Several people laughed before Evelyn even understood what he meant. I am only assigned to serve the guests, she answered quietly. Exactly, another noblewoman replied with a playful grin. Then serve us properly. Smile. Surely even a forgotten Omega can manage that. More laughter spread through the gathering. Evelyn forced a gentle smile despite the growing heat in her cheeks. She reached to continue past them, but Lucas smoothly shifted sideways, blocking her again without touching her. Not so fast, he said. We have heard Omegas are gifted with calming songs. Sing something for us. It might improve the evening. A few voices immediately encouraged the idea. Others simply watched in silence, unwilling to interfere with the entertainment. Evelyn looked around the circle forming around her. No one appeared angry. No one appeared concerned. To them, this was harmless amusement. I do not sing very well, she admitted. Lucas tilted his head with exaggerated disappointment. That is unfortunate. Perhaps you are not useful after all. The remark drew another wave of laughter, louder than before. Evelyn tightened her fingers around the wooden tray, willing herself to remain calm. She remembered her late mother's gentle voice repeating the same lesson throughout her childhood. Kindness loses its meaning if it survives only easy moments. She took one slow breath and answered softly, I hope your evening brings you happiness. The unexpected response briefly confused the crowd. Lucas blinked before letting out an amused laugh. Did everyone hear that? She wishes me happiness after being mocked. One elderly woman standing nearby lowered her eyes with quiet discomfort, but she remained silent like everyone else. Evelyn carefully stepped around the gathering and continued toward the fountain, ignoring the whispers that followed behind her. Broken. Weak. Invisible. Each word landed like another pebble dropped into still water, creating quiet ripples she refused to let anyone see. High above the festival, hidden behind the carved stone balcony overlooking the square, a solitary figure dressed in the dark uniform of a royal knight observed every moment without speaking. His face remained partially concealed beneath a traveling cloak, and none of the nobles below recognized him. Yet his steady silver eyes never left the young Omega walking away with quiet dignity instead of bitterness. While the crowd quickly returned to laughter and celebration, the mysterious observer remained perfectly still, watching not the people who demanded attention, but the one person who never asked for it. The music resumed as though nothing unusual had happened, and the festival slowly returned to its rhythm of laughter, elegant conversation, and carefully rehearsed smiles. Evelyn Carter carried her empty basket toward the eastern walkway where fresh water flowed from an ancient spring into a wide stone basin carved with symbols honoring the moon goddess. She welcomed the quieter corner of the celebration, grateful for a few moments away from curious eyes. Kneeling beside the clear water, she rinsed several silver cups with steady hands while the cool evening breeze carried the scent of pine and cedar across the valley. Somewhere nearby, children laughed as they chased glowing lantern bugs between the trees. It was a simple sound, innocent and free, and for a brief moment it softened the ache left by the earlier humiliation. Then a frightened cry shattered the calm. Help! A child's voice called from beyond the fountain. Several guests turned their heads, but none moved. Evelyn rose immediately and hurried toward the sound. Near one of the decorative stone bridges, the little boy she had noticed earlier sat on the ground with tears filling his bright blue eyes. His small carved wolf had slipped through the wooden railing and fallen into the shallow stream below. While trying to reach it, he had stumbled, twisting his ankle against the smooth rocks. His richly embroidered clothes suggested he belonged to an influential family, yet the adults nearby hesitated, unwilling to wrinkle expensive garments or interrupt important conversations over what appeared to be a minor accident. One nobleman glanced toward the child before returning to his discussion without another word. Evelyn did not hesitate. She gently set her basket aside, crossed the narrow stream using the flat stepping stones, and carefully retrieved the carved wolf before kneeling beside the frightened boy. There you are, she said with a warm smile as she placed the little figure back into his hands. He was waiting for you. The child hugged the toy tightly but still struggled to stand. Evelyn noticed the discomfort in his expression and quietly asked, "May I look at your ankle?" He nodded. Her hands moved with practiced gentleness as she examined the swelling. There was no serious injury, only a painful twist that needed rest. She brushed away a few damp leaves clinging to his boot and placed both palms lightly around his ankle. The warmth that always appeared whenever she wished to comfort someone flowed naturally through her fingertips. It was not bright enough to notice beneath the moonlight, nor dramatic enough to resemble magic, only a quiet heat that eased fear before pain. The little boy's breathing gradually slowed. His shoulders relaxed. Within moments he looked up with surprised eyes. "It does not hurt as much anymore," he whispered. Evelyn smiled. Sometimes people heal faster when they know they are not alone. The child grinned for the first time that evening. "Mother always says brave warriors never cry." Evelyn gently shook her head. "Even the strongest hearts become heavy sometimes. Courage is not pretending you are never afraid. Courage is choosing kindness anyway." Unseen by either of them, the silent royal knight remained standing beneath the shadow of an ancient oak overlooking the bridge. His silver eyes narrowed with quiet curiosity as he watched the Omega comfort a stranger who had nothing to offer her in return. Around him, nobles continued praising strength, influence, and noble bloodlines, yet the simple act unfolding before him carried a dignity none of their speeches possessed. As the little boy laughed softly while holding his carved wolf close again, the mysterious observer realized he had witnessed something far rarer than power. He had witnessed a heart that remained gentle after the world had given it every reason to become cold. The little boy's grateful smile remained in Evelyn Carter's thoughts as she returned to her duties, carrying freshly cleaned cups toward the central pavilion where the evening banquet would soon begin. Around her, servants hurried between decorated tables while musicians tuned their instruments for the arrival of the royal guests. The sky had deepened into rich shades of midnight blue, and the full moon hung above Ashen Hollow like a silent witness, bathing the ancient valley in soft silver light. Evelyn paused only long enough to straighten a tablecloth disturbed by the evening breeze before continuing her work. She never noticed the quiet footsteps approaching from behind until a calm masculine voice spoke beside her. "You comforted that child as though nothing else in the world mattered." She turned and found the same royal knight standing only a few feet away. His dark traveling cloak concealed the crest upon his uniform, leaving only the polished leather of his boots and the steady silver eyes beneath his hood visible. There was nothing threatening about his posture, yet something about his quiet confidence made the noisy festival seem strangely distant. Evelyn lowered her head respectfully. "He was frightened," she answered. "Anyone would have helped him." The knight looked toward the bridge where the child had already rejoined his family. "Anyone," he repeated gently. "I counted more than 20 people standing nearby." Evelyn followed his gaze before offering a small smile that carried more sadness than disappointment. Sometimes people become distracted by important things. The knight studied her expression carefully. "And you were not." She shook her head. "People are always more important than ceremonies." For the first time that evening, the mysterious stranger allowed the faintest hint of a smile to touch his face. It disappeared almost immediately, replaced by thoughtful silence. "May I ask you something?" he said after a moment. Evelyn nodded. "Why do you continue showing kindness to those who laugh at you?" The question lingered between them as music drifted through the cool night air. Evelyn looked toward the glowing lanterns hanging from the ancient pines before answering. "Because their laughter tells me something about them. My kindness tells me something about me." The knight remained silent. She continued softly, never looking directly at him. "If I allow cruelty to decide who I become, then I lose far more than my pride. I lose myself." Those simple words settled into the quiet like falling snow. The knight lowered his eyes briefly, as though weighing each one against memories only he understood. Before either of them could speak again, a sharp voice echoed across the pavilion. "There she is." Lucas Hawthorne approached with several noble companions, each carrying confident smiles that faded only slightly when they noticed the unfamiliar knight standing beside Evelyn. Lucas offered the stranger a polite nod before returning his attention to her. Our hard-working Omega seems determined to avoid the celebration. Evelyn answered respectfully. I still have responsibilities to finish. Lucas laughed lightly. Responsibilities can wait for a moment. The evening grows dull without entertainment. Several nearby guests turn toward the gathering with growing curiosity. The hooded knight neither interrupted nor stepped forward. He simply remained where he stood, observing every face with unreadable calm. Lucas seemed encouraged by the stranger's silence. If the royal guard had no objection, surely no one else would interfere. Come, Lucas said with theatrical warmth. Surely you can spare one moment for the guests. Evelyn quietly tightened her hands around the empty tray she carried. Across the festival grounds, lantern flames flickered as a stronger breeze swept through the valley, and somewhere beyond the towering pines, the great ceremonial bell rang once more, announcing that the Alpha King had officially entered Ashen Hollow, though almost no one realized he had already been standing among them all along. Lucas Hawthorne stepped closer with effortless confidence, drawing the attention of every nearby conversation as though the festival itself had become his stage. Our honored guests deserve something memorable, he declared with an easy smile. Perhaps our quiet Omega can offer a blessing before the royal banquet begins. A ripple of amused whispers spread through the gathering. Evelyn Carter remained still, holding the empty wooden tray against her side. I am not a priestess, she answered gently. Then offer a wish, Lucas replied. Surely even an Omega can wish prosperity upon the Pax. Several nobles nodded with playful approval, treating the moment as harmless entertainment. The hooded royal knight watched without expression from only a few steps away. He neither interrupted nor encouraged the exchange. Instead, he observed every choice, every word, every silence. Evelyn slowly looked around the growing circle. Faces filled with curiosity. Faces expecting embarrassment. Faces waiting for another reason to laugh. Yet among them she also noticed the little boy she had helped earlier standing beside his mother. He smiled at her with complete sincerity, unaware of the tension surrounding the adults. That single innocent smile steadied her heart. She placed the tray carefully upon a nearby table and folded her hands. Then my wish is simple, she said softly. The conversations around her gradually faded. May every family gathered beneath this moon return home with greater compassion than they brought here. May the strong remember the lonely. May those who feel unseen discover that they have always mattered. Silence followed. Not because anyone had expected wisdom, but because no one had expected such genuine kindness. Lucas forced a polite laugh to break the quiet. A touching speech, he said lightly. Although compassion has never defended a kingdom. Before Evelyn could answer, the little boy suddenly slipped free from his mother's hand and hurried toward her. She helped me, he announced proudly for everyone nearby to hear. She made my ankle feel better. The child's mother looked surprised before offering Evelyn a grateful nod. Thank you for looking after my son, she said warmly. Evelyn smiled. He was very brave. As the boy reached for her hand, the sleeve of Evelyn's simple grey dress shifted slightly above her wrist. For only an instant, beneath the silver glow of the full moon, a delicate pattern shimmered across her skin. It resembled intertwined branches woven into the shape of a crescent moon, appearing and fading almost as quickly as reflected light upon water. Most people never noticed. They were already returning to their conversations. But two pairs of eyes remained fixed upon the mark. The hooded knight became perfectly still, every trace of calm replaced by focused disbelief hidden behind his composed expression. Across the courtyard, an elderly scholar dressed in deep blue ceremonial robes had also seen it. The old man gripped the carved head of his walking staff as though afraid it might slip from trembling hands. His lips moved silently, repeating words remembered from an ancient prophecy nearly forgotten by time. The moon blessing, he whispered so quietly that no one standing beside him heard. The mark had already vanished from Evelyn's wrist. She herself appeared completely unaware that anything unusual had happened. She thanked the child once more before lifting her tray and quietly returning to her work, disappearing once again among the servants moving between glowing lanterns and banquet tables. Yet neither the mysterious knight nor the elderly scholar watched anyone else after that moment. Beneath the silent moon, each realized they might have just witnessed a sign that had not appeared for generations, and if they were right, the forgotten Omega carrying empty cups through the festival was no ordinary servant, but the living answer to a legend the kingdom believed existed only in stories. The festival reached its brightest hour as hundreds of lanterns illuminated the valley with golden light, reflecting against polished armor and crystal glasses while musicians filled the night with triumphant melodies. Servants carried the final courses toward the grand banquet, and every noble family waited eagerly for the official appearance of the Alpha King. Evelyn Carter quietly moved through the crowd with practiced grace, replacing empty pitchers and collecting abandoned dishes as though she had become part of the scenery itself. She never noticed the elderly scholar following her movements from a respectful distance, nor the hooded knight whose attention had never once drifted away since the mysterious mark had appeared beneath the moonlight. The old scholar finally approached the knight, keeping his voice barely above a whisper. "Did you see it?" he asked. The knight answered without taking his eyes off Evelyn. "I did." The scholar tightened his grip on his carved staff. It matched the oldest descriptions exactly. The knight remained silent. If the legends are true, the scholar continued carefully, the moon blessing appears only upon the one chosen to restore balance when pride has blinded the kingdom. The knight finally turned toward him. His calm expression revealed nothing, but his silver eyes carried unmistakable certainty. "Legends alone are never enough," he replied. "Truth must reveal itself." Before the scholar could answer, loud applause erupted near the central platform. A herald stepped forward and raised an ornate silver staff. "Honored guests," he announced, "prepare yourselves for the ceremonial blessing before the royal banquet." Nobles immediately gathered around the platform while servants hurried to clear the remaining pathways. Evelyn quietly lifted another basket, intending to leave before the ceremony began. She had no reason to remain where important people celebrated important traditions. As she passed the stone fountain once again, the little boy she had helped earlier smiled brightly and waved. Evelyn returned the gesture with gentle warmth. His mother noticed and offered another grateful nod before leading him toward the gathering crowd. Watching the scene unfold, the elderly scholar spoke once more. "Chosen souls rarely seek recognition." The knight answered softly, almost to himself. "That is why they are so difficult to find." Across the courtyard, Lucas Hawthorne watched Evelyn disappear among the servants with growing satisfaction. To him she remained exactly what she had always been, a quiet Omega who knew her place. He never imagined that the unnoticed conversation taking place nearby concerned her alone. As the ceremonial drums began their slow, steady rhythm, the scholar glanced toward the towering statue of the moon goddess overlooking the valley. Ancient carvings covered its weathered base, nearly forgotten by generations who admired power more than wisdom. His memory returned to words preserved inside manuscripts older than the kingdom itself. "When the blessed one walks unnoticed among the proud, the moon will reveal what the eyes of men refuse to see." A cool breeze swept through Ashen Hollow, stirring every banner at once. High above the valley, clouds drifted away from the full moon until its light poured freely across the festival grounds. For the briefest instant, the silver glow rested upon Evelyn as she crossed the open courtyard carrying nothing more remarkable than an ordinary basket of empty cups. She continued walking without hesitation, completely unaware that two men now carried the weight of an impossible secret. One guarded the oldest prophecy in the kingdom. The other carried the greatest authority in it. And both had quietly reached the same conclusion before anyone else had even begun to suspect that the forgotten Omega standing among servants might soon change the destiny of every pack gathered beneath the moon. The ceremonial drums fell silent, leaving a stillness so complete that even the wind seemed unwilling to disturb the sacred moment. Every noble, elder, and warrior turned toward the towering stone platform where the herald stood beneath the royal banner. "Citizens of the Northern Territories," his voice carried across the valley, "welcome the protector of every pack, His Majesty, Alpha King Adrian Blackwood." Hundreds of guests bowed as a line of royal guards entered the square with measured precision. Yet confusion spread almost immediately. No king followed them. Murmurs rippled through the gathering as nobles exchanged uncertain glances. Lucas Hawthorne frowned, scanning the crowd for the royal procession everyone had expected. Evelyn Carter remained near the edge of the courtyard, quietly placing her empty basket beside a stone pillar before lowering her head with everyone else. She assumed the Alpha King had simply not yet arrived. Then steady footsteps echoed across the ancient stones. The hooded royal knight who had spent the evening watching from the shadows walked calmly toward the center of the square. His pace never changed. His posture remained effortless. As he reached the ceremonial platform, the captain of the royal guard struck his armored fist across his chest before lowering himself into a respectful bow. Every guard immediately followed. The elderly scholar lowered his head without hesitation. One by one, nobles throughout the valley realized what was happening. Shock swept across the festival like a sudden winter wind. Lucas stared in disbelief as the stranger slowly removed his dark traveling cloak. Beneath it rested the unmistakable black ceremonial uniform embroidered with the silver crest of the royal bloodline. Gasps rose from every direction. The quiet knight was no ordinary soldier. He was Adrian Blackwood himself. Evelyn instinctively stepped backward, her eyes widening with surprise. She replayed every conversation they had shared only minutes earlier, realizing she had spoken to the Alpha King without ever knowing his identity. Adrian's silver eyes searched the crowd until they rested gently upon her. He did not look toward the wealthiest families. He did not acknowledge the nobles who eagerly straightened their posture in hopes of earning his attention. Instead, he stepped down from the platform and walked directly toward the forgotten Omega standing alone beside the servants. The crowd instinctively parted before him. No one dared block his path. Evelyn lowered her head respectfully as he approached. "Your Majesty," she whispered, clearly overwhelmed. Adrian stopped only a few feet away. For a long moment he simply looked at her with calm certainty, as though confirming a truth he had carried within himself long before this night. Without speaking, he unclasped the heavy royal cloak from his shoulders. The embroidered garment, recognized by every person present as the symbol of the Alpha King's authority, rested carefully upon the stone ground before Evelyn's feet. Confused whispers spread through the crowd. Then, before anyone could understand his intention, Adrian Blackwood slowly lowered himself onto one knee. A wave of stunned silence swept across the valley. Time itself seemed to stop. Lucas Hawthorne's face lost every trace of confidence. The elderly scholar quietly closed his eyes as though witnessing the fulfillment of words preserved for generations. Evelyn stared at the king in complete disbelief. "Your Majesty," she said softly, "please, you do not have to do this." Adrian looked up at her, his voice steady enough for the entire festival to hear. "I do." His expression carried neither hesitation nor pride. Only profound respect. "Long before this kingdom knew your name, the moon goddess did. Tonight I honor the one whom destiny has already chosen." Not a single voice answered him. Beneath the full moon, surrounded by nobles who had measured worth through power alone, the Alpha King remained kneeling before the quiet Omega they had spent the evening overlooking, and in that single breathtaking moment, an entire kingdom watched everything it believed about greatness begin to change. For several heartbeats no one moved. The only sound came from the lantern swaying gently above the square and the distant whisper of pine branches beneath the full moon. Evelyn Carter stood frozen, unable to believe that the most powerful alpha in the kingdom remained on one knee before her with complete sincerity. Around them, the nobles who had spent the evening competing for the Alpha King's attention could only stare in stunned silence. Lucas Hawthorne struggled to find his voice. "Your Majesty," he finally said, forcing a respectful bow, "there must be some misunderstanding." Adrian Blackwood slowly rose to his feet, lifting his eyes from Evelyn to the crowd gathered before him. The warmth he had shown her disappeared, replaced by the calm authority of a ruler whose words carried the weight of law. "There is no misunderstanding," he answered. "The only mistake made tonight was by those who judged another soul without knowing her heart." His gaze settled briefly on Lucas before moving across the assembled nobles. No anger appeared in his expression, only quiet disappointment. "Throughout this festival I watched powerful families speak proudly of honor while ignoring kindness when it stood before them. I watched respected names value appearances more than compassion. I watched a young woman mocked for her position, yet she answered humiliation with grace. When a frightened child needed comfort, she stepped forward while others remained still. Character reveals itself when no reward is expected. Every sentence settled over the valley with undeniable truth. Several nobles lowered their eyes. Others exchanged uneasy glances, remembering the moments they had laughed instead of speaking. The elderly scholar stepped forward beside the king and raised his carved staff. "I witnessed the ancient sign upon her wrist," he announced clearly. "The moon blessing described in the oldest records is real, and it appeared exactly as our ancestors recorded. Whether its full meaning has yet been revealed or not, none among us should treat this woman with anything less than the highest respect." Quiet murmurs spread through the crowd. The little boy Evelyn had helped earlier smiled proudly as he squeezed his mother's hand. She looked toward Evelyn with grateful eyes and became the first among the guests to bow her head. One by one, others followed. Some bowed out of belief. Some out of respect for the king. Some because they suddenly realized how carelessly they had judged someone they had never truly seen. Lucas remained standing for only a moment before lowering his own head as well. His confidence had vanished, replaced by the uncomfortable understanding that his careless words had revealed more about himself than about the Omega he had mocked. Adrian turned back toward Evelyn, his voice becoming gentle once more. "You owe no apology to anyone here." Evelyn looked around at the hundreds of faces now watching her with entirely different eyes. She felt no triumph, only quiet humility. "I never wished for anyone to feel ashamed," she answered softly. "I only hoped people would remember that kindness should never depend upon someone's rank." Her simple words carried farther than the loudest speeches delivered that evening. Even those who had doubted her found themselves unable to argue with such honesty. Adrian smiled with quiet admiration. "That is precisely why you deserve the respect they withheld." A warm breeze crossed the valley, lifting the royal cloak still resting upon the ancient stones. Moonlight shimmered across its silver embroidery before illuminating Evelyn's peaceful face. In that unforgettable moment the festival was no longer remembered for its grand banquet, its noble families, or its magnificent ceremony. It became the night an entire kingdom discovered that true greatness could not be measured by status, wealth, or strength alone, but by the quiet courage to remain compassionate even when the world offered every reason not to be. As the final ceremonial bell echoed across Ashen Hollow, the full moon reached its highest place above the valley, bathing every stone, every towering pine, and every face in quiet silver light. No musician played. No noble dared interrupt the peaceful silence that had settled over the ancient festival grounds. Evelyn Carter stood where she always had, wearing the same simple grey dress, her hand still marked by the honest work she had performed throughout the evening. Nothing about her appearance had changed, yet everything around her had. The people who had overlooked her now met her eyes with respect instead of indifference. Those who had laughed earlier lowered their heads with quiet humility, understanding that the greatest lesson of the night had come not from a throne but from an ordinary heart. Adrian Blackwood stepped beside Evelyn instead of ahead of her, allowing the gathered packs to witness a choice more powerful than any royal decree. He extended his hand, not as a command, but as an invitation. Evelyn looked at him for a brief moment before placing her hand gently in his. He smiled, not because destiny had surprised him, but because kindness had proven stronger than pride, exactly as he had hoped it would. Together they walked toward the ancient stone platform where generations of Alpha rulers had accepted the loyalty of their people. This time, however, Adrian stopped before climbing the final step. He turned to face the crowd and then looked back at Evelyn. "This place was built to remind rulers that authority is a responsibility, never a privilege," he said calmly. "Tonight the kingdom has been reminded of that truth." Instead of walking above everyone else, he waited until Evelyn reached his side, and together they stepped onto the platform as equals. The elderly scholar raised his staff toward the moon, his weathered face filled with quiet gratitude. "Let this night be remembered," he declared, "not because destiny revealed one chosen soul, but because an entire kingdom was given the chance to choose compassion." A gentle breeze swept through the valley, carrying thousands of tiny silver leaves from the surrounding trees. They drifted slowly through the air like blessings scattered beneath the moonlight, settling across the ancient stones without a sound. The little boy smiled as he watched them fall, holding his carved wolf tightly against his chest. His mother placed a loving hand upon his shoulder and whispered, "Never forget what you witnessed tonight." Across the gathering, conversation slowly returned, but they were different now. Pride had become reflection. Judgment had become understanding. Even Lucas Hawthorne quietly approached Evelyn before the evening ended. He bowed respectfully and said, "I believed strength meant standing above others. Thank you for showing me that true strength lifts others instead." Evelyn answered with the same gentle kindness that had guided her through every trial. "We all have another chance to become better than we were yesterday." Adrian heard those words and realized they carried more wisdom than countless speeches delivered inside royal halls. As the first light of dawn began to soften the distant horizon, the lanterns gradually faded against the coming morning. The festival ended, but its story had only begun. Long after the music disappeared and the crowds returned to their homes, parents would tell their children about the quiet Omega who never demanded recognition, the king who honored humility before power, and the night the moon reminded an entire kingdom that the strongest hearts are not the loudest, but the gentlest. And somewhere beyond the ancient forest, where the rising sun touched the mountains with gold, destiny quietly prepared the next chapter, because the greatest journeys never truly begin when a crown is placed upon someone's head. They begin the moment a humble heart changes the world around it without ever asking for anything in return.